I'm Lou Rosalia, and this is Crew Call. Discarded electronics heavier than the Great Wall of China, and being blunt taken to the point of being nerve rattling. On this week's episode of Crew Call. Welcome, guys. Frank and Joe Scacciaferro, Mr. Scott Glozzi. Good to see everybody.
What's up, Lou?
Hey, Lou.
Dead air. Everybody's so quiet.
How's it going?
Sorry, Lou. Hi, Lou. Hi, Lou.
What's up, Lou?
Guys, I read a great article. It was the number was 63 million tons of discarded electronics, which they equated to being heavier than the Great Wall of China. And I'm like, wow, that's a lot of stuff that just gets thrown out constantly. And I thought about how much stuff there is in production, from actual staging to, rigging to all the stuff that's involved in it. But more specifically, I wanted to talk to you guys about the gear you have, because you have to be buying stuff, obviously. How long does it last? What do you do with it after it's done? Is there a cycle that you've noticed? Joe, does it happen that way? Do you get stuff? Does it just obsolete and sit on a shelf? What happens?
I could do an entire hour show all by myself talking about this subject, so I'm going to try to not dominate it.
Okay, wait a minute. I'm going to put the time down. Go.
Okay, so technology doesn't obsolete.
Okay.
What happens is people using it try to push it to do other things. In the music world, a guitar is a guitar. People pay hundreds of thousands of dollars for an old guitar. Tube amps, the tubes, I don't even know if anybody even knows what a tube is. A tube is a piece of electronics that actually does the amplification in early, even, in I'm looking around my room, nobody can see them, but I have amps, there's Marshalls here, there's Ampegs over there, and it's tubes. It still is. It's a technology that came out in probably late 30s, early 40s, maybe even before that. So the music industry doesn't obsolete. They add on top of it. That is, until you go into a recording studio. Recording studios, their technology, the toys themselves, the preamps, the effects units, all the other stuff, clients walk in and they want the newest, coolest thing on the block. Mm-hmm. So you have to keep up with it, which is why all of us sold our studios, because it's millions and millions of dollars in those piles that you talked about, because it's wasted technology. Right. I have an old analog board behind me that I love to death. I keep analog gear because I just like the way it works, mm-hmm. and more importantly, I'm comfortable with it. Digital technology that's very nested, meaning every time you go to do something, you have to menu down, lower, 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 lower. I didn't grow up that way. It's very difficult for me to make quick changes. Even in a television studio, if your boards are nested and you want to menu through the ME bus on a switcher, you're pushing buttons. By the time you get there, the segment's gone. So I don't agree with obsolete or obsolescence, but I understand it. And you and I have experienced it when your computer gets an upgrade in the operating system, and then all of your applications don't work.
Yep.
And so it's nested into the coding to the software world. Yeah. It's the same problem. So, like I said, I could go on and on with this, but I'm not. So there's my overview.
That's a good overview. I thought of I think I'm going to call it the right name. Slate. It was the manufacturer of it, and it's a board. And it's just a giant screen about the size of your board, and it's all digital. And I'm like, how does that work? And it looks just like the board, the analog board, but you got to menu through it. Like you said, you got to turn a knob using like the up and down, not the physical tactile thing.
Yeah.
It's got to be a fascinating, interesting way of shifting your brain. Frank, talking about specialty cameras and specialty equipment, you're on the cutting edge of that, and you see a lot of it, and you innovate a lot of it. How quick does it change? Does it get better? Does it improve? Like we just had a crew call last week. You spoke about jitta, which was a jib in the air. So there's a regular jib, and now there's a jib in the air. What's the next thing? Jib in space? Ta-da-ta. But seriously, what's the pile of stuff that you have that you no longer use or has moved into something else? What does that look like?
If I go personal stuff, it would be definitely the drones, because I mean, there's like new ones coming out every other month, and it's kind of like, damn, I want that one, or like this one now could do that. So it's not, and the other ones are still functional. They still work. You can still use them, and they're still, either like the camera upgrades are usually a big thing, or just the actual functionality, or the I'm gonna use a really stupid term here, but like smartness of the camera, or intelligence of the camera, or of the actual aircraft, as for obstacle avoidance and stuff like that. Like they keep adding on to their main, the main thing that it originally is. But I'll hang on to some of them, or I'll sell them to people that are either just starting out, or I just gave Blas actually one of the other ones, because he doesn't fly many drones. He usually does a lot more of the steady cam groundwork when him and I do stuff together. But if he had interest in getting into it, and I had just bought another, like the newest one, so I'm kind of using that, and then I gave that to him and be like, to try, like, kind of mess around with that and maybe get familiar with flying some stuff. Well, but I mean, I've sold like 3 of my other drones to other people that are either just, like I said, just starting out, and it's like, I'll sell it at half the price, because you could buy the newest one for, a couple $100 more, but it's like not really necessary for for someone starting out, because one, they don't know how to use it yet, and that's a lot of money if you happen to, crash it or something like that. But it's also like, you don't know if you're going to want to keep doing it. So why go out and spend, $1,200 on like the newest technology of a drone, where I could sell you this for $400 or $500. You can mess around with it, and if you don't like it, then if you don't want to keep using it, then maybe you could just get rid of it as well, or hang on to it, whatever. But
Frank, what time frame is that for those older pieces that you had? Older being what? 3 years, 5 years, 2 years?
I would say I've probably started flying them when I had the Phantom 3 was the first one that I had, which was, I don't know, a lot. We were living in Hoboken together actually at the time. And
it was probably like 5-6 years ago.
More, I would say almost 8 years ago. Yeah, I would say probably about 8 years ago. It was the first one I've had. So since then, and then up until now, I've had the Phantom 3, the Phantom 4, the Mavic Pro, the Mavic Air 2, and now the FPV drone. So that's five different drones over a period of
8 years.
What, 8 years? I mean, and there's other ones that I could have gotten. It's just that was my evolution of that. So but it's also like, I always want a new toy came out. I mean, you're just like a little kid at that point, but you're just a little kid that has a lot of money.
Right.
Not a lot of money, but enough money to spend, spend your own money.
Yeah, and that goes to Joe's point. The stuff doesn't become obsolete; it becomes useful to another person in another way. So that's an interesting thing. Gloss, I want to fill in the blank, buddy. I wish I could still use my blank in terms of an old piece of equipment.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that.
Yeah,
part.
So you got it. I heard that, and I said, let me talk some more.
Well, I'm gonna jump out of the production world. I would say Nintendo 64 would be my answer.
Really?
That's what I wish I could still use in terms of technology. Yeah. No, but going back to play to your point though, outside of what I could use, I like how we're talking about passing on equipment, because I've been the source of someone's first camera. My first camera, I outgrew it. I needed more bells and whistles, I guess, and I needed more capabilities out of my camera, so my old camera became my B camera, as we call them, and then eventually I didn't need it, so I found somebody who wanted to get into photography, get into video, and I was like, why don't you buy my old camera? I'll sell it to you for not a lot of money. You take it and you go experiment. If you don't like it, give it back to me. I let them actually take it before I sold it to them, to see if, like Frank said, to see if they actually like to shoot. So it's kind of like a nice rite of passage, you know. It makes you feel good. Like my old equipment is being used by someone to actually learn the trade, you know,
Yeah.
and learn how to
So
shoot.
you know what? That's funny
it's a-
because I was going to follow up with the question of, is it more about preserving the legacy of a piece of equipment that you really loved, or is it just getting a couple of bucks for it? And you've answered it. It's really about passing it along. I think that's kind of neat.
Also, I mean, I feel like I would keep a cool camera if I had a camera and I had this really cool job somewhere in a really cool location and it became sentimental to me. Maybe I'd put it on my shelf and just let it sit there, and it becomes a sentimental piece,
Yep.
to you. So,
Yep. Joe,
But yeah.
do you have a piece of analog gear that you absolutely love that's now in digital format, but you refuse to move over because you really think the analog is better?
Most of it.
You're so old school.
But you know what, Lou? To that point, I own the digital gear
Yeah.
too.
Yes.
So I was listening to what both of them were saying, and I was like, that's really interesting. And I'm wondering if it's your roots that you grew up either family wise or it's because of the industry I come from. So the industry, the music side of this is nothing's old. And everything has a purpose. So I don't want to I have everything I've ever bought. I still keep it around. Effects boxes, little MXR boxes. I have everything. I have an old Canon film camera, that I still have, that I keep in the original bag, and it sits out there. JVC video cameras that
went through a fire.
It's just that went through a massive building fire. There's also, but then I have, a DSLR that I'm getting okay with. I'm more comfortable shooting stills. I've not really spent much time in the video world, but certain circumstances in the last couple of years it's necessitated that I learn that. So I'm not going to go back and learn something that shoots at 720, which is a low res or, low framing. Okay, I know I need to go upgrade to this, so that's what I have to learn. So to answer your question directly, yeah, I keep a lot of the old stuff around. I'm not a collector, which there are, but it's just I find value in certain things, and I'll punctuate that with I love the challenge of doing something new with something old.
Interesting. Very interesting.
An awesome thing, and it's not my story, but everybody here knows the story, and that interview is in our industry leaders area of FerroCity, which is talking about, and I'll just really quickly, Rick Cipher, who's obviously been in a lot of stuff here. He worked on he's been doing the apron camera for boxing for HBO and all other networks like for years. Like he's like first call for that. When Mark Wahlberg made the movie The Fighter, Rick did that. Yeah, it's right there. The picture's literally right there. Rick did that. Mark wanted to replicate the exact look of HBO back whatever year that was, and Rick happened to work on that fight. So they got the original camera operators, the original cameras, everything. The way that HBO did that fight and broadcasted that fight, they got all the exact same equipment and they shot it that way. They didn't want it to look like a film, which is like another film that he worked on, which was Southpaw, just shot completely differently.
Wow.
So yeah, so going to using old gear to get a certain look, then yeah, that's purposeful and it makes sense. It's like, thank God people had those cameras around still, and you could still go do that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And put a comment in there. Certain look, certain sound. Because everything you do has to be relative to those two things.
Frank,
Even lighting, everything fits into those worlds.
I was going to ask you, speaking of old gear and new gear and solving problems, what was the fastest you've seen something developed, either old or new, to solve a problem, especially during COVID? You do a lot of robotics, specialty camera remote stuff.
Yeah. I mean, on the remote side of things, and probably, I mean, I know Joe had been involved a lot with developing a lot of that and around the people that are developing that technology of doing remote stuff like this, but at a broadcast like quality level, where everyone now is accustomed to, because of COVID, really is accustomed to seeing people in their house and or somewhere on location, but like using either their computer or some type of at-home setup, now the technology has developed to where you're sending out actual kits that have some type of broadcast quality camera that you kind of, and everything's in one. It has a light in there, it has a return monitor, it has a microphone, and everything that would need, but it's really just like they're called fly packs. I would guess it's basically a whole production in one that you can just send. Think of it like a briefcase that has a whole production in it, basically.
You're talking about a physical bag
thing
of something
yes.
that gets sent.
A physical thing, yes. And I mean, all networks have them now. I mean, one of the guys I know at MSG, he had to go pick up one of the on-air talent that was in Brooklyn, and they've had it for a while, like at their apartment. He had to go there in the morning and go pick up that fly pack, that remote fly pack, because everybody was doing stuff from home, and now they're going to collect everything because things are moving back into the studio and all that. So I mean, that was definitely the fastest where everybody was jumping on it.
Yeah, just moving that stuff. So now we've got all this stuff in bags ready to go on that 35 million pound pile. That's next. Hey, Klaus, random question. Have you ever actually inserted a music cassette, into a cassette player?
Maybe like in my parents' car back when I was a little kid, I think. And then I had to pull all the tape out because it got stuck.
No, that's hysterical. It's a good one. What I was going to ask you next is, what was it, the Nintendo 64?
Oh, yeah.
Where is that? Where is that now? What pile is that on?
It's starting the new wall in China, probably. It's probably all from China, also. Anyway, most of the stuff we're talking about.
No, we still have that.
No, it's right next door in my living room.
Serious?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, 100%. That's that going back to the sentimental side of things. That's something I will never get rid of, because I remember Christmas morning waking up, running down the stairs, and that was right front and center under the tree, and that's what I opened. So that's
they're also
just
I'll never great games. Like they're classic games. Oh, yeah. Like they're never gonna not be fun to play.
People still play them. You got to blow in the bottom of the game to get it to work. You got to flick the switch a million times to get it to turn on. But it eventually does, and it's just technology that's it's outdated, but it'll never not be fun to play with. And that's probably why Joe loves all his old audio equipment too, because it's fun to play with. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's fantastic, guys. I next subject. I was reading something, and I said this has really got to be difficult for frontline production people. And the topic that I introduced the show is that being so blunt that it's nerve-wracking to either the person receiving the message or giving the message. And specifically, I'm saying you guys are involved in live broadcast. You're trying to save the shot. Joe always says, my loyalty's to the project. So if something's going down and it's going wrong and you got to get action like now, you don't have time for political correctness. You don't have time to send a memo. You don't have time to, sir, excuse me. You got to just blurt it out, get it done. What's that like in the world, Joe? I mean, how is it being so blunt that you have to do it to get the results you need? Is it hard?
I probably have to recuse myself from this because I don't even know what you're talking about.
Because it's the natural state, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's not, again, I'm going to tell you, it's not broadcast. It's live music performance. It's theater. It's anything that's moving quickly. But to that point, it's film sets. And film sets are the most laborious, time-sucking things you could possibly do. But you still are going to have directors yell. I mean, it's classic Hollywood. Stop! We'll do it again. Go back. Take 942. There's a persona. There's an attitude, a prevailing attitude that is just in the business. Am I boring you?
No, I don't know if you heard my phone was going crazy ringing. I was trying to save. My brother's obviously calling me. Here he is, Anthony, about the washing machines that we had to put in there. Yes.
Oh, we got a caller. We got a caller on the line.
Talking
It's
about new
caller.
technology and the pile of junk. That's where they're
Long-time
going.
listener, first-time caller, Lou's brother.
Yep. So go ahead. If you didn't
You're
hear the
live
ring,
on
we're
Crew
okay.
Call.
I apologize.
And I wanted to give you an example of my bluntness.
Yes, please. Thank you. It was good.
That was my example.
It worked. It was perfect.
So anyway, going back to that, in certain positions, you don't have any time, and you don't have, and all of us recognize it. I mean, these guys have worked with me, but they've also worked with hundreds of me's. They've also been me's. So you're in a position, you need to just bark orders. I never ever like comparing our industry to military, but everybody does. But when it's flying, when we're moving at top speed, you don't have time. You can't be polite, as you said. So the bluntness and the quickness is, and I mean, I start every one of my production meetings with an apology to the people who don't know me. I said, listen, we're going to get in here, we're going to start doing this, and I'm going to yell. You're going to get fired on. And I'm apologizing now for that, and I will apologize later on. But during it, I'm not apologizing, because we got to get it done. And I've been on stages, a festival of 100,000 people, and something's got to happen. Mm-hmm. If a mic goes dead on stage for a performer, you can't say, okay, excuse me, does anybody have an extra mic? Nobody can hear him singing right now, and Mick Jagger's important. Somebody needs to hear the rest of the song. Let's get a mic out there right now. Get him out there. Go, 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 go.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't. That's what you have to. I'm sure I just crushed my mic, but you have to do that. So bluntness isn't bluntness as it is in a genteel society. Bluntness is barking orders under fire.
Mm-hmm. Frank, you've worked with Joe most of your life, and the phenomenon of direct, unfiltered bluntness and feedback was brought upon you early in your career. Has that been a good thing or a challenging thing for you moving forward?
Well, let's also specify two things: it's career and then just life, because I also just grew up with him as a father. Anyway,
true. True.
I mean, I always appreciate somebody rather doing that than like beating around the bush and trying to get something done, because like he was just saying, it's that sense of urgency is like you don't have time to dance around something that you want, and usually. And I mean, maybe this goes back, now that we're talking about this, like going back, just growing up with him, if I had something that I needed to ask him to like a favor or something, I would start with like other questions. He would just be like, just ask the question. What do you want? He's like, I don't need all the explanation of whether, and so, I mean, I was just kind of groomed that way anyway. And I wouldn't really know anything different. And I would, that's how I would always rather be spoken to. It's not in a, I feel like people take the word when you say bluntness as that it's in a mean way, or if it's, something that's going to be hurtful. It's not. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just being straight with somebody, and so I don't.
It's the efficiency, and they have to work with directors, and directors are notorious for that. Now, it doesn't mean you have to yell, and you don't have to trash them, as Frank's saying. But there's an efficiency to getting to the point. Mm-hmm. You need to tell these guys directions immediately. This is what has to happen.
Right. And if things get heated, obviously, in the moment of that, but it's just, so you have to be that way. And if you're not, then I don't see you lasting at that position for that long.
Yeah, I don't think you can. Glazer, you came into the business as an intern through Ferro Productions, into the formal part of the business. So you've learned a little bit about the feedback deployment methodology. What lessons have you taken from them and applied to what you're doing now, and also running Urban Visuals? How did that help?
Yeah, I mean, being in a studio environment like what we're all talking about right now, we keep saying sense of urgency, there is, because everything's planned down to a second. You need to hit cues, you need to get off the air, on the air when you're supposed to, there's commercials running in between your airtime, so that sense of urgency, and, if something goes wrong, you can either sit back and wait for somebody to solve it, or you're the person that needs to solve it. And when that happens, things are going to happen quickly. And when Joe's that guy, and he, you need to stop what you're doing and just listen to what he's saying, and then get that done in the most efficient way possible. And when shit's going wrong and you have to hit a certain cue, that's when people start yelling. Then it gets a little hectic. But But yeah, I guess when you're getting, you're getting that feedback and you're getting instructions in that hectic time, it's how you react that makes the biggest difference, and how you react is kind of how you practice. So, when you're rehearsing, when you're doing things like that, you need to know the show well. So when something does go wrong, you can react the correct way.
Joe, how do you?
Because it's hectic.
Joe, how do you react to blunt feedback from others?
Same way.
Just
I respect it. I mean, I take it in stride, and I do sit in the middle. So I've got if I'm working a live music show or a theater, there's stage managers. Some stage managers are assholes. Most of them are wonderful, but I understand their position. I understand their responsibility. In the end, something screws up, that I do something that causes a show to happen, not happen, an event, somebody not to hit a mark on a theater because I didn't put them where they were supposed to be. I don't get screwed for that. The stage manager does. So I understand that. So I'm appreciative of, clearly tell me what you want me to do at that moment, and I will execute it. If you're not clear and you're not efficient and you don't do it succinctly, then you know what? Then it's on you, not on me.
Right.
Can I ask a question, even though I'm not you?
Sure. Of course.
I have my own personal part of this, but Frank's been doing a lot of international. He's worked with guys from England. He's worked with guys when he was in Japan. He's worked around. Frank, is there a cultural, and Glass too, because your clients are from all over the place. Is there a cultural difference in the way they approach what we're talking about from different countries, different regions of our country? Or is it just become an amalgamation of all of our, just the way the industry
It's the
works?
culture of the industry. It's exactly that. I don't. Yeah, I think everybody's their mindset, and especially at the level that we're at, I would say the culture of anybody that's kind of any of these international guys, whether it's from the UK, Canada, Australia, anywhere, like everyone's kind of similar, and you can, and the ones that aren't, you can kind of see that quickly, and you identify with those people because you also know you identify with them quickly and you get along with them more because you're also when things are going wrong, you know who you can count on in that room to get something done quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I don't find it to be a regional thing or anything like that. Yeah, I think it's definitely just a culture of the industry.
Frank,
you kind of just took the words right out of my mouth too. I was going to say something very similar. It's a team. It doesn't matter where you're from. And it's a team playing the same sport. You know what I mean? It's whoever's on your team that day is who you're going to trust. So everyone came up the same, not the same way, but similar way. Met a lot of similar egos as we've talked about. Dealt with them. Grown past it. So everyone has a lot of similarities in what we do, and you just you move past that and you get the job done.
So
Lou, I'm going to steal one more chunk of your time.
Go ahead, please.
Because we're talking about international. Well, I was. So the point I've worked with, especially during music tours and all that, we're everywhere. So a lot of the tour managers and production managers are all, and they're in charge of a music event, a concert. And it's so funny because I've been in their line of fire because something I was doing, whether it was getting a show back up online, a piece of equipment or whatever. And when they're yelling, and they yell. I mean, I've dealt with, Welsh. I've done it with England. A lot of these guys, I don't even know what they're saying. Because once they get in that fury, they're just, and I'm like, okay, cool. I guess you're upset. Look, I'm trying to do what I have to do. So the point is, what Frank, I was just curious to what they've experienced. Because my experience is, it's all the same. Even if you don't know the language, you know what's going on. You know what you're being told to do.
Right.
So that's mine.
Gloss, you brought up ego, and in this business, ego plays a big role because there's a lot of people with them. Is ego something that gets in the way, or are you personally able to set aside your ego to hear this type of feedback from people in that fashion?
Yeah, but you got to set. There's got to be some sort of balance. Like I can deal with somebody with an ego. You know, if I'm on set, they're on set. We have two different ideas of how something needs to get done. You work around it. You know, if you have a strong ego and you're going to want it your way, then you know, if you're giving the instruction, fine. I'll do it. I'll do it your way. But if I have a better way, I will suggest it, and I'll say it in a constructive way, and not like I'm not going to battle you for seniority here. You know what I mean? And I feel like that's kind of when egos might get in the way on sets, like especially between like, a stage manager and someone like a Steadicam operator. Not to give a very specific example, but you know, he might be wanting. Steve. Yeah, right. I got a couple guys I'll tell you about. No, but yeah, there's just certain workarounds. You have to put your ego aside. But yes, I've been in situations where it does get in the way. People want things specific, you know, they want it how they want it, and that's it, you know, for some people. So
you know what? I think the big lesson that I'm learning is that you need to adapt quickly to being able to work in the environment all three of you have just laid out. I think, Frank, you're very lucky to have been brought up in that. I think, Joe, you're extremely lucky to be able to teach that and get that message across effectively and bring people into the business like Gloss and have it work out. You know, I would have went home crying 3 times already. Like I felt bad when my phone rang and you were yelling at me. Totally.
And well, you should have.
Totally, Traeger. I got to go to my little room now and relax a bit.
Get the hell off my set. Get off my set.
You know what?
Yeah, go ahead.
Lou,
go ahead.
There's a phrase used in football, and we've all lived around that, being embedded with the teams for a while, and it's for cornerbacks. In that position, you get burned a lot. You know, a receiver gets behind you, and it goes for a touchdown. It's short memory. You can't hang on to it. You have to let it go. Gloss knows it from baseball. Frank knows it from baseball. And we all know it from this thing. What you just said is it's gone. I forgot I even said that to you. I mean, and that we were doing it in jest. But you have to be able to just let it go as quickly as it comes out of your mouth. If you dwell on it, if you go home and you think about it, you're in trouble. If you did something wrong, correct it and learn from it. But you don't need to... You don't need to beat yourself up over it. That part of it is unproductive.
And I think and it's funny because the way that he just said he didn't even remember that he said that to you is because it's not coming from, like I said before, it's not coming from a place of like being mad or hating. It's just a sense of urgency. It's not like it's not like he's yelling at you because he hates you, you know,
right.
or speaking to you a certain way because he hates you. It's just because something needs to get done, and that's kind of just the nature of the industry.
Well, sometimes it feels like he hates you.
I hate you.
Sometimes it feels like
You've been
that.
working with these guys, and we, you know, over the course of all these shows, you could see the love, the intensity. You know, they're family. Well, one is. They're like family to me. It's like a son.
It's like a son I never had.
But there's still, when we're on set, you have to respect the position. So. And I mean, they've both evolved to a point where they're not the young newbies that just came in. They're equal peers. They're at that same professional level as me. But if I'm in the position of, I don't care, I'm a stage manager or I'm producing. Sorry, you know, you can think you can bark at me, but I'll bite you then because it doesn't matter. You gotta stop. Because that becomes a problem for the crew. Because if you know, it's everything in the world. If you start losing your respect and your position from the president down, everything starts to break apart at that point.
Right.
So if you're in that position of leadership, you have to fight to keep your leadership, and you better know what you're talking about. But you have to keep it, otherwise it all breaks down really fast.
Yeah. Back to the corporate saying is lead, follow, or get out of the way.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much it.
It's a great phrase.
Yeah.
I'm stealing it.
Yeah. And I feel better. Thank you guys for talking me through that whole thing. Like, it was crazy. I want
to wrap it up, Lou. All right, we need to get out of here.
Thank you.
I gotta say, building off your last point though, the best leaders come from those who are the best followers.
We have to wrap it up, Frank said. This is it. This is
me
it.
off. Right.
We're done. That's it. Gentlemen, thank you so much. Thank you for your tremendous insights on drones and Nintendo and Joe being blunt.
If you don't know what that means, check out the other episode.
See you guys next week. Take care,
All
everybody.
right. See you, Lou.
All right, Lou, take care.
Peace.